Monday mornings, we get an opportunity to speak to Randy Staples, the publisher of Idaho Weekly Briefing, and we get a rundown of various people and issues going on around the state. It's coming up on 8:43, and we're back down to 8. All right. Hey, the weather forecast does say a warm-up is on the way, at least over the next 36 hours. So we'll get there. It's just going to be kind of a grudging getting there. Bill Colley with you as well this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com. Randy, welcome back. But I wanted to say right off the top, since you have some links at the website as well for some books and various things, I'm sure there's still time for people to do a little bit of that shopping if they've got a family member or two who likes to read a little bit about Idaho history and politics.
Oh, absolutely. We have a number of books that you can see the cover of and link right through on www.ridenbaugh.com. The most current one are the first fiction books that we've written that we've published. They're novels by a he's now deceased, but a longtime political science professor at the University of Idaho, and these are three books they wrote about Idaho. This is a guy who was very influential with a lot of Idaho leaders over a long time. Dirk Kempthorne, the former governor and interior secretary, wrote one of the forewords for one of them. Dave Leroy, former lieutenant governor and possible congressional candidate this next time, wrote another one. So that gives you an idea of what kind of influence that he had. Those are three kind of enjoyable books, and I would recommend them.
Since we're talking about writers, right? Maybe the place to start today on some of the subjects you've written about over the course of the last week. You after 50 some years actually in the business of writing for newspapers, Bill Hall, who was a well-known figure in Idaho, is going to hang it up and moving on, I guess, into retirement now. But what you were writing in the column this week was that he was so influential that even before the internet, he was widely read by people in the halls of power all over the state.
Oh, very much so, including people that didn't much like what he had to say. It was his style was very distinctive. He had a great knack for coming up with kind of witty lines that would really jab at a lot of people and ideas. And he was very widely read back in the 60s and 70s. People would mail out his columns or read them out or fax them or do whatever they could in the in the technology of that day. And he was very well known and certainly had a big impact on a lot of political people and on a lot of journalists too. The journalists pretty much in the state pretty much all read what he had to say, and whether you agreed or disagreed, and he prompted plenty of people in both directions. It certainly had a big effect. He retired as an editorial writer some years ago, but he's continued to write columns up until last week, and I thought that was kind of needed to be noted and a little bit of history given there.
We have such a diffuse media environment any longer, and we've had so many changes, just radical changes in the way news is presented, gathered, and the like over the last 10 years, 15 years. Will anybody have that sort of an impact, I think, on a statewide level again?
I don't know that anyone necessarily will. I think that's a very good question. If whether any particular person does. Back in the 60s and 70s, the news media was not derided as instantly as it so often is now. Now it's been trashed by a lot of people, and very often people who are doing it for very specific personal reasons or political or professional reasons, and it doesn't have the same kind of influence, I think, in the general public that it did back then. So maybe not.
A lot more competition.
The answer, I guess, may be that no matter who the person was or what they did, that their level of influence might not be as great now as it was.
Speaking of influence, I heard Joe Biden mention last week that Democrats, he thought, across the country had lost the support of their core. And I guess a lot of people are saying that in election day postmortems. And you mentioned that Sally Boynton Brown is from here in Idaho is looking to take over the Democratic National Committee in Washington. Some of the other names that have been floated have sort of faded away in the last couple of weeks. If, from my perspective, if that party was looking to reconnect with what is often called flyover country, selecting someone like her would be a good direction to go. Do you believe she's got much of a chance?
Well, I think that one of the questions that you always ask is with something like this is, since you've been in charge in you've had a leadership position at least in your own state, what kind of an effective difference have you made in terms of moving your party forward? I think it would have been way too much to expect of any any party official to have made a wholesale change in Idaho. I mean, Idaho kind of is what it is. But this last election saw Democrats lose more seats from a position where they already seem to be pretty much at rock bottom. There's not a whole lot of solid evidence that she's kind of got the better mousetrap here. Uh, she's well liked among Idaho Democrats, and I'm sure that Idaho Democrats will be happy to support her for the position. But I think that a lot of Democrats around the country are probably going to be looking for a little bit more evidence that what they need can be found there.
Although she could probably make an argument that in some parts of the country, geographically, it was almost a wave election, and there wasn't a whole lot she could do to counter that.
Oh yeah, yeah, and I think it's often true that party officials, especially party chairs, get a lot more both blame and credit, both, than is really merited. There's only but so much that they can do. They should take the role as she has and her predecessors have in trying to find good candidates for the various positions and keeping some of the party organization elements going and keeping people working together. And so far as I can tell, she's done a pretty good job with those things. But if you're in a minority position, you need somebody that's really going to shake things up in some way. And well, we'll see. Maybe she makes a pitch that really catches their attention. But my offhand assumption is that probably Idaho's not going to be providing the next Democratic national chairman.
It's about 10 minutes away from 9 o'clock, and we have 11. Joining us this morning, Randy Staples from Idaho Weekly Briefing. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and News Radio 1310.com. I know we didn't mention it in our email exchange, but gosh, since we're talking about Idahoans maybe going to Washington, it's starting to look as if it's really going to happen with Governor Otter.
You can never tell until it's done. Uh, I On my website I have columns from several other writers, and one of them wrote a column just a few days ago in which they were talking all about the impact of appointing Raul Labrador as to the new administration, and that or no, excuse me, appointing Kathy McMorris Rogers from Washington State to the new administration, and that wound up not happening. This is a period of time when there are a lot of rumors. There's a lot of speculation. Lots of names get thrown around, and my basic stance is I'll believe it when there's a formal announcement.
And again, the governor's people aren't, though, in any way trying to dismiss it, just as when Mr. Labrador came out of Trump Tower last week, he was a little coy, too, as well.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's I think there's always going to be a little bit of a careful straddling there. They don't want to be dismissive of it, but they don't want to look or sound too eager either. It's a little bit unclear to me how much Butch Otter would want it uh, at this point, given his age, given that over the next couple of years he'd probably be kind of phasing out of the political career that he has had. Does he want to uproot and go to Washington for what would be a pretty intensive stretch of work at at the age that he's at? I don't know. I'm. It's always difficult for people in that kind of position to turn down that kind of an offer, but I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily be entirely shocked if, on reflection, he said, "No, I think I'll serve out my time as governor and do it that way." We'll see.
There was a story that I caught my attention right away in Ada County, and this happens periodically in various places in different forms around the state. People are getting telephone calls from some stranger telling them that they failed to report for jury duty and that they're going to be in serious trouble. Obviously, it's some sort of scam going on, isn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah, and there's these kinds of sort of semi-official scams seem to be happening more and more. A number of attorneys general around the state, and I think Lawrence Wasden is one of them, has been reporting that there are people around their states that have been getting calls from someone who purports to be from the attorney general's office, and they have to do this and that and the other thing, or else they're going to wind up in legal trouble. And there's a good deal of this kind of thing going on, and it is just scams. I would recommend that if you have any question about whether it's real or not, hang up, call the office yourself, so you know that you're actually talking to the real office and the real people who work there, and ask them whether there's any truth to it. Very likely, or unless you've been involved in some kind of activity with them up to this point, very likely you're not going to you're not going to encounter that. It's almost certainly a scam.
Our guest, Randy Staples from Idaho Weekly Briefing, joining us this morning. It's coming up on 8:55. We've got about 2.5 minutes to go. Right now, we're at 10. Bill Colley with you as well on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Fascinating story. Idaho National Laboratory has come up with a device apparently for wireless recharging of electric automobiles, which it sounds very revolutionary because you don't have to mess around with a cord, from the car all the way to the house or the motel or wherever you happen to be. As we see more and more alternative energy type of automobiles out there, this could be something that could be quite revolutionary.
One of the things that the Idaho National Laboratory is not, well, there are a lot of things that the Idaho National Laboratory hasn't been as widely noted for as they should. It's known best probably for the work that it's had to do related to nuclear power, and that was where it really got its start. But it's been working on things like electric power for cars for a very long time. They have a number of different kinds of energy research going on there, and it's really kind of a fascinating collection of what what they're doing and some of the directions that they're taking. This could be a fairly significant one because you do kind of get the feeling that between the self-driving cars, some of the advances in hybrid and battery developments in a lot of vehicles, that we could be at kind of a turning point, at least in the near future. And INL may be one of the key places for dealing with a lot of that and kind of pushing that over the edge.
And very quietly so too. I mean, that's the other part of all of this is they don't get the attention, let's say, that a lot of other labs around the country garner.
They really haven't gotten as much for a lot of these things as they should. They're involved in a lot of different kinds of projects. Their scope has been much broader, I think, than a lot of people. I think much broader than a lot of people in Idaho realize. And maybe this will help people understand the range of what they do out there.
Well, we want to thank you again, and just for those folks who may have tuned in after our beginning, if they'd like to know more, where do you send them?
I would send them to www.ridenbaugh.com. That's RIDENBAUGH.
I wish you and your family obviously a joyous time, and we're not going to be talking again until 2017. But my gosh, I think we're going to have to do another one of those specials before we get to legislative session.
We may have to do that. And Merry Christmas and Happy New Year's to you and yours as well.
All right, Randy, thank you much. God bless. Take care. Randy
Okay.
Staples joining us this morning on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. from Idaho Weekly Briefing. And when I said that we won't talk to him again until 2017, that's because next Monday, day after Christmas, is the company holiday, Christmas falling on obviously a Sunday. And then the following Monday, because New Year's Day falls on a Sunday, that's also a company holiday. So we have 2 short weeks, Tuesday through Friday, coming up the next couple of weeks right here at News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. It's 10. Hey, coming up, in the next hour of the program, we're going to spend about 15 minutes chatting with Don Chandler. Many of you know Don because, of course, he may have measured you for a tuxedo at some point over the course of the last few years here in Twin Falls, and he's also in the cleaning business too as well. But he's also in the business of helping people lose weight, including me. I've lost a huge chunk of weight in just under 3 months. He's going to join us in a few minutes and clue us in as to what's going on here. That's on the way on Top Story, following news from Fox at 9 o'clock.